For more than a decade, the boards voted each year to approve separate million-dollar line items for both sheriff and EMS from occupancy tax. In all this time, no one raised the two most important questions. How do general public safety services attract tourists? And is the tourist region demand really greater than that of our residential areas? The answer to the first question is no. General public safety service, like basic sheriff and EMS coverage, are not tourist attractions. This is common sense. If they were, they would be featured in the tourist guides of Currituck, Dare, and competing counties. But of course, for more than a decade, the guides show no mention. The answer to the second question is also no. The data shows that the public safety service demand in the tourist areas is actually much less than that in residential areas by any objective measure. This statement is based on analysis of 2 years of sheriff and EMS call data records, over 150,000 calls over this period. Here is an overview of the results. Even at the peak of the summer season, when there are twice as many tourists at the beach than there are residents in the rest of the county, the beach has less than half the sheriff and EMS calls. Further, the beach tourist area is family-oriented, and the nature of the public safety demand is less severe. The call data shows only 7 arrests in the tourist area all year, while the rest of the county required more than 400 arrests to keep the peace. Evidence shows that County Manager Scanlon knew that his proposal of additional seasonal costs for the tourist area actually were the full annual costs. Our discovery revealed that Mr. Scanlon maintained an occupancy tax spreadsheet capturing previous and planned future OT spending. Shown are the line items for sheriff and EMS spending from occupancy tax on his spreadsheet. Other evidence uncovered shows that budget amounts he proposed for sheriff additional seasonal coverage in the tourist area were actually the full cost of coverage for the entire year. Similar evidence shows that Scanlon's proposed costs for additional seasonal EMS coverage for the tourist area were also the full cost of coverage for the entire year. The audit reports show that the only deviation from Scanlon's 2012 projections for sheriff OT charges were in 2013 and 2015, when hundreds of thousands of additional OT dollars were used to purchase sheriff vehicles. Similarly, the audit reports show that the only deviation from Scanlon's 2012 projections for EMS OT charges began in 2018, when hundreds of thousands of additional dollars from OT were used to pay for mainland EMS coverage.
We transfer over $1 million from the occupancy tax in the general fund to support additional law enforcement that's hired for the summer season. We also transfer another additional $1 million for additional ambulance units that are needed for the influx of population. We do augment some of the services that we provide have to be ramped up for the summer season. We bring on additional EMS crews and EMS units. We have additional law enforcement that comes in for the summer. It is to provide additional coverage of emergency medical services, additional ambulance and personnel that's required with the influx of the summer traffic of population. The Sheriff's Department also increases and upstaffs for the season. OxyTax pays for the additional cost associated with putting additional EMS units in the Outer Banks to account for the influx of tourism population that we experience. So it's the additional cost of EMS services. At the same time, additional law enforcement is deployed onto the Outer Banks to account for the influx of that population. So 1.2 million of OxyTax goes to reimburse or to cover that cost.
I want to make sure that folks understand these are not EMS services year-round. These are specific times that we have increased demand because of the tourism in our community. It's the same with the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office ramps up activity on the Outer Banks as the traffic and the tourists increase our population. You'll see the big spin there is for the extra EMS staff that is housed in the beach. That's to help facilitate the uptick in population we have. Same with the Sheriff's Office.
Abuse of discretion. This argument is fundamentally fact-based, so the county can take issue with any of our points. But at this hearing, the county must indicate to the court that they have tangible evidence that, if shown at trial, could prove us wrong. I feel that we need to lay out all of our arguments before the judge now to give him a better understanding of how blind the county has been on this issue. Our brief discusses case law that defines limits to discretionary judgments. The individual decision makers need to understand the law and its proper interpretation. They need to be provided with the material facts surrounding a decision. As a group, they need to carefully consider and discuss these facts. Their decision needs to be made with a good faith rationale that is aligned with the law, and that decision needs to be absent ulterior motive. Based on these legal criteria, we identified facts in 5 areas that we believe support our claim that the county has abused its discretion. First, the individuals, commissioners, in their deposition testimony and public statements show a lack of understanding of the legal requirements. There's a lot of evidence showing they mistakenly relied on the county manager who helped define legal authorizations. The board as a group failed to publicly consider the legal definition of TRE and have the information available to it to determine its proper use for government services. There's a clear lack of due diligence in appropriating OT for public safety, and there may have been an ulterior motive to help OT to balance general budget. As individuals, commissioners showed a lack of understanding of the new law's requirements. One board member even argued that nothing had changed. The depositions of 5 current board members show a wide variety of misunderstanding, as do many email records of exchanges that show embarrassing discussions, such as this one. Perhaps some of this confusion is tied to the fact that they relied on the county manager to define what was legal. 5 years of Board of Commissioner meeting videos showed these examples. Previous boards had approved this. You have broad latitude. It's not just for tourism. If you vote to approve it, it'll be legal. And the auditor never said our spending was illegal, even though, as an accountant himself, he understood the limitations to what the audit reports say. And all this time, the county attorney was silent.
Our third point is that the board as a group was not given factual information on these issues, nor did they openly discuss the legal definition of TRE as it applied to them. Our team found nothing in mountains of material that we reviewed. The county's argument that they discussed all this in work sessions is implausible. Although there are no minutes or videos of work sessions, any documents shown to the board there should have been turned over in discovery. Certainly, we heard no such deliberations in the work sessions that we did attend. Lastly, 3 recorded last-minute board meeting amendments show no TRE consideration.
Our fourth point is covered in 3 areas where they demonstrated a lack of due diligence in their appropriations. Videos since 2015 show the county managers falsely justifying full-year budget amounts as additional cost just for the summer, specifically not full-year costs. The data table to the right is a compilation of audit report data to approved budget items and defense provided information on the actual cost. This was the table we used in all depositions and confirmed by the finance director. The county managers knew or should have known that the amounts they proposed were at or above full-year costs, but they chose to represent them as just for the summer. But no commissioner questioned these amounts before voting yes. As noted in our affidavit, another example of lack of due diligence surfaced when, during depositions, board members were shown this data and asked to compare the budgets they approved versus what the actual costs were. As shown in the graph on the left, in 2018, the EMS budget jumped by $400,000 and stayed at the $1.6 million level, the red line. But the county data shows the actual costs dropped significantly, and in their depositions, the county commissioners could not explain how the extra millions of dollars they approved for transfer to the general fund may have actually been spent. Meeting videos show that the commissioners used a false rationale to justify spending. They claimed that rental homes in the beach tourist area created a greater demand than residential homes elsewhere in the county, and thus OT should pay the extra cost. Well, even if this were true, we hold it would not be a justification under the new law, but it is actually false. As we discussed over Exhibit E at the preliminary injunction hearing, had they looked at call data, they would have seen that for both sheriff and EMS, although the number of beach calls do increase during the season, they never rise to the level per home as in the residential areas. Even during the peak months when there are more than 50,000 tourists at the beach has only half the calls for service as the 26,000 residents in the rest of the county. But no commissioner questioned this false rationale before approving.
Commissioner White, in his public statements and in his affidavit, fails to acknowledge the general government responsibility of the county to protect life and property throughout the county paid by property tax. His affidavit does note that to do this year-round requires a dedicated team to ensure quick response and backup if needed. The data shows the 16 to 18 full-time staff assigned to the Corolla Outer Banks is still less than what is needed for a similar number of residential homes in Moyock.
Our fifth point under abuse of discretion is that the board had an inherent conflict due to their dual roles, and this may have created an ulterior motive. They were the only tourism authority in the state that did not have any tourism representation. All the others have a majority from the tourist industry. But as tourism development authority members, they knew that they must develop tourism. But as county commissioners, they must have a balanced budget by law. It is clear from the record that the commissioners understood the property tax impact of using OT to pay for general services. Both emails and deposition testimony confirm this understanding. Email records show that they understood the issue. With the Currituck rate at 48 cents, such an increase would be politically sensitive. Deposition testimony indicates at least some current board members clearly understood this as well.